I will have to say that the roll call was made at the beginning of a previous recording, and declarations of interest were asked for. There were none. Therefore, I was able to dismiss the substitute councillor, Councillor Freegard, for attendance at this meeting. So the niceties have been adhered to, even though they're not physically on this recording, but I did do those things. We've gone through the roll call, declarations of interest. So I was just going to call on Mr. Chappell to run the committee through our only decision-making item today, which is an application to vary a premises licence for the Celtic Lodge. This information is found on page 3 to 26 in the bundle. Mr. Chappell, could you please start the ball rolling?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay.
And good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay. This is an application to vary a premises licence. The premises being the Celtic Lodge, 36 Westermore Road in Neath. The applicant is the Celtic Lodge Limited, and the company is represented today by Karen Jones, who is also the DPS at the premises. Members, this is an application for a variation of a licence, and the application is quite simple in its proposal, in that they want to add the addition of the sale of alcohol in the beer garden area of the premises. There is a plan that's been circulated prior to the meeting. I have that available. If necessary, we need to share the screen later into the meeting.
Okay, just if I could just stop you there, just to make sure that all Councillor James and Councillor Jones, you have received the plan. Yeah, go ahead then.
Great, thank you, Chair. There were representations received in respect to this application. We had representations from the Environmental Health Officer, the Legal Regulatory Services Officer, being the licensing officer. And in addition to those representations, there were 6 letters of representation from local residents living in the vicinity of the premises. What I will point out at this point, members, is that this application relates to the sale of alcohol in the outside area of the premises, which, if you refer to the plan, is shown as the beer garden. The consumption of alcohol in that area is already permitted and is already conditioned so that the beer garden would close effectively at 10 p.m. Members will note that the Legal Regulatory Services Officer's representation has now been withdrawn, because an agreement was reached with the applicant that a condition be added to the licence, and that condition is going to read: no alcohol shall be sold from the outside bar after 2200 hours, and there must be no consumption of alcohol in any outside area after this time. It's tightened that condition up a little bit from what it previously was in the existing licence. Effectively, what that means is at 10 o'clock, nobody will be able to purchase alcohol in the beer garden area, and nobody will be able to consume alcohol in the beer garden area. So they'd all have to be within the premises. There obviously are representations from the residents that are outstanding. Plus, there is a representation from the Environmental Health Officer, which has not been agreed. However, members will note the representation. There isn't anything specific in it. No. There was some talk about outside hours being limited, and there's some discussions about limited the numbers of people, etc. But perhaps we can still get into those sort of questions, Chair, as we progress through the...
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
At this point, Chair, would you like me just to quickly share the Google Images plan?
Anything that can help with the decision making, yeah. I would welcome, Mr. Chappell.
Okay, I'm going to do that now, then, Chair, and I can just let me just pull that up there. Okay, so this should be coming up onto your screens now. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we've got here is the Celtic Lodge. If I move my mouse, can you see my mouse as well?
Yeah, is it possible to enlarge it at all, Neil? No?
I can't see the image you're seeing.
No, that's okay. I just wondered if you could or not.
It's very large on my screen.
Okay.
You could
I'm not sure
enlarge
what-
it yourself.
Yeah. If I could just very quickly just show you this, perhaps we can refer to it later on if necessary, and I can bring it back up. But the Celtic Lodge is effectively this building here in the middle of this piece of land.
Yeah.
And the beer garden area that we're referring to, where you can see the pin where it says Celtic Lodge.
Yep.
This area here, this grassland area, is now a decking area.
Right.
So there are tables and chairs within this area already, and my understanding is that has been there since around about 2015.
Okay.
The proposal today is not to do anything in relation to the consumption of alcohol within this area. It is to allow the sale of alcohol within that area. Currently, the sale of alcohol must take place within the premises, but the proposal here is that they will also be able to sell the alcohol outside. So currently you have to go into the premises, purchase your alcohol, and then you can bring it outside. The proposal is to be able to sell the alcohol from a bar, which is located currently just outside the patio doors, pretty much under the yellow pin that you can see on that plan.
Yeah.
And then obviously the neighbours that have made the representations are located in these houses which back onto the premises there.
Yeah, that's quite clear.
Are you happy for me to take this back down for a second then, Chair? And if
Yes, of course, if any member wishes to refer back, they need only ask and you can put it back up.
Okay. I'm going to try and bring myself back. There we go. So, Chair, thank you for that. The recommendation today is that members determine this application after considering all relevant representations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chappell. And now for the basis for the visitors that we have are not au fait with our procedures, what happens now is I'm going to ask the two people who are here in opposition to this, do you have one speaker? Or do any of you want to speak and ask questions, or are you here to listen only? For the two people in opposite, Mr. Alba?
I don't think we have a centralised approach, but if there are questions that are relevant, I'd be happy to ask questions as they go through.
Right.
As will I.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. What I was going to do is sort of take the two of you. The procedure is you can address the committee now and say your objections. Officers and members of the committee may then ask questions, and the applicant may also ask questions. And then the same procedure is done for the applicant. They can actually address committee. Officers and members may ask questions. Then there is a summing up process. If I come back to you, if there's anything that you wish to add at the end before the committee withdraws to make their deliberations. Okay, is that clear? So I would ask one of you, I don't know which one, to Mr. Alba, we start with you. I can see you clearly on the screen here. If you could just say why you would like to object, or if or you want to rely on your submissions.
Chair.
Yes.
Apologies. Can we maybe start with the applicant, please, as opposed to?
Oh, of course. Yes, it's the other way round. I do apologise. Everything is getting a bit confused here. No, I'm sorry. I got somebody knocking at the door now as well. So I'll just have to leave him. We'll start with the applicant, Karen Jones. Could you please address the committee and tell us why you think this should be approved?
Yeah, of course. The original, excuse me, idea for this was COVID. It seemed to be a sensible thing to have the bar outside so that we could serve people outside so they didn't have to come inside. That is the one and only reason for the application.
Oh, that's pretty straightforward then, yes. Okay, and in one part of the bundle, I'll go to questions afterwards. No, that's okay.
Am I supposed to have a bundle or not? I haven't had no bundle.
Nicola, has the actual bundle been distributed?
It should have been distributed, Neil, because I'm only just stepping in today because somebody's not in work. Neil, you're on mute, sorry.
The reports usually go out at the same time as the invitations. Obviously, they don't come from me, but I'm assuming the report has gone. I mean, the report is, as I've outlined it.
Yeah, it's very
basic. There isn't a
basic.
huge amount in it, but it contains the.
I just wondered, you know, if I haven't got a bundle, I haven't got one, so I'm not gonna, you know, it's one of those things. But I didn't know if I was supposed to have one, but no, I haven't had it.
Mr. White, may I take your advice on this?
Effectively, obviously, the document should be available for Miss Karen Jones and all the objectors to see, which effectively the document, as I understand it, is the report itself, and the representations made by the Legal Regulatory Service, the Environmental Health, and the objectors. Has Miss Karen Jones seen any of those documents? As far as
I've seen the letters from the 6 residents.
Right.
Oh, right.
I've had those. I'm happy to carry on. You know, I haven't got a problem with it. I just wondered if I was supposed to have one, so it's no big deal.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'll do is I'll go through what is actually in the bundle then. It is just a brief outline of why we're actually here today. The application has been made, a brief history, and then the representations from Mr. Peter Maloch, who was the regulatory licensing officer for the council, who stated that in the beginning he had an objection to the application, but that he withdrew that when a condition was inserted that the sale of alcohol would cease at 10 o'clock. Is that correct, Mr. Chappell?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, okay. So today we have no representation from the licensing officer then. He is quite happy that this application may be considered on its merits with that condition added. Okay. Subsequent to that, we did have, there is one letter here from, I'm trying to find it, the environmental health. It was quite short. I'm sorry. Here we are, environmental health. Okay. This was from Rachel Matthews to Sarah in licensing, I believe. Yeah. I've looked at our complaints database and there are no noise complaints associated with it recently. However, the site they are proposing is bordered by residential properties. I would say that this is likely to cause a problem as they have not previously used this area for this. I think they will need temporary permission if that's possible, with restrictions for hours of use, numbers and staffing stroke managing it. What do you think? And then Peter Maloch replied to that, saying that he had no issues with it because of the insertion of the condition. And then the last bit of the bundle is all 6 letters from residents, and that is the bundle really in its entirety. There is no actually extra paperwork. So if you haven't had that, I've just briefly described exactly what's in it. Yeah. We need to then take the recommendation is that we make a decision based on the representations we have in front of us today, and those are they. Okay. So if you're happy to go forward with that.
Yeah, of course. One thing I would like to say is that Miss Matthews says that it hasn't been used. That decking area has been used for outside consumption for the last 6 years. And there has not, I'm sure
we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, and that is why I'm so concerned that we need to have somebody from the department for us to question. So yes, but with regards to your submission to the committee, you have just stated it was for COVID. There may be a question on that coming forward. I know that one has been written in, so I've got a question based on that. But at the moment, that's your submission and you don't wish to say anything further. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to answer any questions. You know, this
Yeah,
is
right.
It's fine.
The procedure is now that officers of the council may ask you questions regarding your application, and then I'll go to members of the subcommittee who, if they have any questions, they will ask you questions. So I'll start off. Mr. Chappell, do you have any questions for the applicant? Yes, he's nodding.
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for your submissions, Ms. Jones. If I could just ask you a few questions in relation to the premises, and then moving on to your proposed application. So your premises as it stands has a premises license under the Licensing Act 2003, and you are permitted to sell alcohol from within the premises, within the bar area of the premises identified on your plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And you have developed an outside area with tables and chairs and some decking area at the rear of the property.
Yeah,
okay.
The parking pointed on the map.
And when did you erect that?
That was in 2015. Yeah.
Right. And you've used that regularly since 2015.
Yeah. When it's not raining, of course.
And how many tables and chairs? What's the capacity of it, would you say, at the moment?
I think actually on the deck in itself, I'd have to count, but I would probably think about between 60, 70 people seated.
60, 70 people. I think just then you turned around then, you're actually in the premises now, are you?
Yeah.
So that door that we can see in the background there is the one that leads out into the decking area, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. And it recently, you wanted to put obviously this bar outside for COVID reasons.
Yeah.
Now that the COVID restrictions have lessened, and you're able to have people back inside, are you still using that bar area outside?
The bar area, the decking area.
The decking area. Sorry.
Yeah, I think when the weather's good, people do feel safer outside.
Yeah.
They do feel it. I don't think it's ever, well, sounded like Boris Johnson here, but it's never going away, is it? So I think, people do feel safer being outside.
Okay. And I note from our records that you've recently applied for 4 temporary event notices.
Correct.
And just for the benefit of the committee, I'll just run through those dates if that's okay, Chair. The first one was on the 29th to the 31st of May, which covered a Saturday, Sunday and Monday. The second temporary event notice was the 4th of June to the 6th of June, which was a Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The third one was the 11th of June to the 13th of June, and that was a Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And the fourth one being the 18th of June to the 20th of June, which covered the Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Can I ask, Mrs. Jones, what was the purpose of that temporary event notice?
It was just the main reason that this application has been in for some time, as you know. I had a phone call from Peter the Friday before the last meeting that your committee was having, saying that the council had forgotten to put it on their website for the 28 days that needed to be on before this meeting went ahead.
That's right.
Peter then suggested to me that if I wanted to use that outside the bar to serve alcohol out there, I would need to apply for temporary events notices, which I then did for those 4 weekends.
Okay.
And I know you put those temporary event notices in, but just to confirm that you did use that bar area out the back and sold alcohol from it?
Yes.
Okay.
Only on those dates.
Yes, obviously only on those dates. Okay. And during that period, did you receive any complaints?
I haven't had any. I don't know.
No complaints directly to you, were there?
No, nothing. No. I don't know if the council has or environmental health or licensing, but I haven't.
We'll get to that. Yeah. Okay.
No, thank you for that. And is it still your intention, now that the COVID restrictions have lessened, that you still wish to use the bar in the beer garden area?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chair. That's okay for me.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Chappell. I'll call on Mr. Gavin White, the legal officer then. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, Chair, no. I do have one for Mr. Chappell, out of curiosity.
Okay.
In respect of that, Mr. Chappell, has South Wales Police made any representations in respect of Celtic Lodge?
In respect of the temporary vet notices?
And in respect of this application to vary?
No, they haven't.
Thank you, Mr. Chappell. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. White. Okay, I will go now to members of the committee, of the subcommittee, beg your pardon. Do you have any questions for the applicant at this stage? Yes, Councillor James.
Thanks. Yeah, Mrs. Jones, obviously this application seen the conditions we put on there for all alcohol to stop being served at 2200 and also no alcohol to be consumed after that. As the DPS, how are you going to manage that to make sure that actually happens?
How am I going to manage that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite simple. What I say happens, and if I say, you know, no alcohol is being served, or you're not allowed to be out there, you're inside, that's what happens. I don't take any nonsense from anyone, to be honest. And at the end of the day, it's my business and in my interest to do what are my conditions. It's not going to benefit me saying, yeah, carry on out there, let's keep serving, let's have the neighbours complaining, let's upset everybody. The last thing I want to do is upset people. I mean, you know, especially the neighbours, you know, at 10 o'clock, it's inside, and it is anyway, whether I've got that bar or not. If people are outside at 10 o'clock, they have to come inside.
Right. Thank you.
Are you happy with that response, Councillor James?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Sorry, Chair. I wonder if we could hear the objections, if there are any first.
Hear the object. Well, they're in the bundle.
Oh, right.
They are 6 written submissions. They all follow a theme of noise and disturbance. Some mention bad language, things like that. But you have in the bundle all of the complaint letters, okay? But they are around the theme of noise, nuisance, children swearing, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I have a question, Mrs. Jones. If you, there's a lot of emphasis put on crowd noise, swearing, getting a bit rowdy. How would you deal with that?
Well, you know, there's a couple of angles on this. Yes, you know, if it does get very loud, or if you've got a group of lads, which, and I can honestly say, when we first opened back up outside, what you find is a lot of places in town do not have outside seating area. So what we found for the first couple of weeks that this did happen, the people that used to drink at the less desirable places in town, and which, you know, without being derogatory, there are people that, you know, will go into a pub at 9 o'clock in the morning. A lot of those places do not have outside drinking areas. So what we found in the first couple of weeks of opening outside, we were getting customers that are not normally our customers. We're getting people that will start drinking at 12 o'clock and keep drinking for 10 hours. Right. So in the first couple of weeks of being open outside, we did find that those people were coming to us without realising, you know, at the end of the day, customer's a customer, but we are generally a family run pub. We have a lot of families with children. So, you know, we don't, it doesn't happen very often that we do have to say, listen, guys, you know, cut your language or keep the noise down. But if that does have to happen, that happens. But now those places are open back up. Those customers don't come to us anymore because they can get it £2 a pint in town. So we don't have that type of customer now.
Okay, that's very candid of you. Thank you very much. I would like to ask now, any other questions from the subcommittee? No. Do any of the objectors have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I'd like to make an observation, if you can hear me okay.
Of course, yes, and go ahead, yes.
Yeah, I'll direct this at Karen. I am encouraged by what she's just said, obviously. Yep. And she is right. In those first couple of weeks when you had those event licenses, there was a hell of a lot of noise and swearing coming from the beer garden. And, you know, when you're sat in your back garden trying to read a book, it's annoying. More than annoying, it drives you absolutely nuts. And there are people around you that work shifts. And if you're on a night shift and you're trying to get to sleep when that noise level is going on, you know, it can be dangerous to that individual because they are operating heavy plant and machinery at night. If they're not getting their sleep, who knows what could happen when they get to work. So, I mean, that is my you know, real issue here is the level of noise. I don't care if there's a bar there, to be perfectly honest. In fact, it's so close I could walk there in 30 seconds and have a drink myself. But, you know, when I hear that kind of noise and language coming from there, right, I don't really want to go there.
Okay, that's your observation, and I thank you for it.
And just one last thing.
Yes.
The other thing that concerns me is whether or not Karen will uphold her end of the deal. And I say that because posted on our Facebook page was a notice, and it reads, "Dear customers, can we please ask you to whisper whilst in our garden? This is due to the fact that we have some neighbours that forget they live next door to a pub and are not a library and have nothing better to do than to run to the council and whinge." That doesn't come from somebody you know, who's a responsible person. Why would you post something like that?
Yeah, I would say off.
I'll come to you in a moment, Mr. Jones. And I understand that you're probably chomping at the bit there.
No, not at all.
I'll come to you in a moment. So I'm dealing with any questions to you from the people who object. So we've had an observation, not necessarily a question. Although he would question whether or not you're going to stick to your what you've just told the subcommittee. Mr. Albert, do you have a question or a comment to make?
I have a point of clarification. The applicant said that the bar area was completed in 2015. Councillors should be aware that there's been a recent construction there of a rooftop, quite large roof protective area to protect from the rain that was constructed in the last year or so, I think, which allows for a number of tables to be put underneath. That was, I believe, completed around about in 2019 for the 60, 70 people, as well as various canopies that have been raised, obviously, for the period of COVID.
Yeah.
So that's for clarification to make sure that the record's straight from that perspective. The other point I'd like to make is that whilst Rachel, I think, from the Environmental Health Officer says that no recent complaints have been received, you know, I think councillors have got to take into account that we are in a COVID environment. Numbers have reduced across the breadth. Of course, there haven't been many complaints. However, to support my other fellow neighbours, there is a regular noise beyond the 10 o'clock threshold that perhaps hasn't been reported as well as it should to the council, taking into account the Facebook posting that was posted by the applicant. But actually, what we tend to do is call the applicant directly and say, would you mind, out of politeness. Now, obviously, what I'd be interested to know, certainly from yourself, Chair, is how does one actually formally complain? Because actually this will escalate in the future on a formal basis.
Okay.
So one really for the applicant is that whilst there is a 10 o'clock threshold, you know, what steps will be taken to pre-advise the people that attend the place themselves to actually bring them in by 10 o'clock, because regularly beyond the 10 o'clock hour there is continued noise that is still, whilst the applicant there is shaking head, I can assure her that perhaps she's not in attendance. It can be heard because of the close proximity of the houses around the actual property. So really it's about that control and support the business and the opportunity to grow business. Again, my final question is that whilst this application is to sell alcohol outside in a COVID safe manner, Once COVID has effectively, the restrictions have been removed, this application is no longer further required because COVID-19 does not apply. Therefore, is this a temporary license that's being requested for a short period, or is this a permanent license? If so, COVID-19 should not effectively apply because the applicant has managed to serve alcohol to this date through those big, large doors behind her for the effective people that come and attend the location. So
Okay.
what's the difficulty?
Right.
Why encourage more?
Yes. Okay.
Number
Can
question.
I just answer? Can I just answer one thing?
Yes.
Can I just respond to that, Joseph? Whether I've got a bar there or not, people are still going to be outside that area. I can serve it inside, they can sit outside. If that bar is not granted today, it's not going to change people sitting out there. I think you've lived in that house for a couple of years now, is it, Joseph?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know the pub was here when you bought that house?
In terms of direct questions, yes, we did. In fact, we frequent your property on a regular basis.
No, you did twice, Joseph, and you refused to pay last time, if I remember.
Oh, listen,
I believe
I think
that your service
excuse
was
me,
poor
excuse
enough,
me. No,
but
I'm
we don't want to
sorry.
get into that at this
No,
stage.
Mr. Alba, I'm sorry, Ms. Jones. I'm going to allow questions that directly affect what we're here to decide today. There is obviously a little bit of animosity between you, which comes out. However, if it's not for the subcommittees to take into account, then we cannot have that in the meeting. So I understand that it's very easy to sort of ramble on a little, but I'm going to have to cut you both short there. With regards to the question, I think that Mr. Alba was addressing you, Ms. Jones, is to, you know, what assurances are there that you will empty, cease alcohol there and then clear the area? And your response, I believe, was it already happens. Is that correct?
I answered that question to Councillor James.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's 10 minutes previously, so it's the same.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm just clarifying. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions at the moment or observations?
Yeah, I have.
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I'd just like to clarify something. Although not recently, I've not rung or been a pain to Karen Jones at all by complaining, because when I did a couple of years ago, when the noise was particularly bad one evening, a member of a staff answered the phone and I said, for God's sake, please, can you ask your customers to be quiet? The noise is horrific. And she said, I've tried, I can't do any more. And that was the response I got. Now, I'm not saying that would happen again, but it is indicative of the lack of control that they do have there. And
I think, yeah,
you know, we need some strong reassurance that if this license is granted, that ain't going to happen again. And what do we do should we get that kind of response from Karen or a member of our staff again saying we've tried and we can do nothing? Where
right.
do we go?
I'm with you. That question then to Mr. Chappell, what can the resident do if noise occurs, even though the condition may be in place? What are their options?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. And I think we always encourage residents in the first instance to try and speak with the establishment where there is an issue and trying to resolve that between themselves. But obviously there is a route into the council for making complaints. Now, if there's a condition attached to the licence which says that people can't be served alcohol, consume alcohol after 10 o'clock in the beer garden, and they go past that time, then they commit an offence. And if you commit an offence, then the council has the power to take action against the offender. And that could be way of a formal prosecution through the court. So it could be ultimately a review of the licence and sanctioning that licence, or either remove conditions, ultimately remove the licence even. So it's important that where there are complaints about premises, that these complaints are made to the council via the appropriate channels. And I think this may be a really good opportunity, Chair, for me just to bring to attention the complaints history from the premises.
Very good. Yes.
So there I've had a look through our records. Now this isn't environmental health records, this is licensing records, and I've identified 9 complaints since 2014 about this premises. There were 4 relating to the outside area. There were 2 in July 2014, 1 in June 2015, and 1 in August 2015. And then there were 4 complaints related to entertainment music inside the premises. So it didn't relate to outside, it just related to music that may have an event then that was going on.
Yeah.
And these, I suppose, if you look at the dates, it was September 2014, November 2014, so Christmas period, December 2014, again, Christmas period with probably events going on, and then 1 in July 2015. There was 1 further complaint which related to planning issues, which obviously we referred through to
Not
that.
your. Yeah.
But we've had nothing complaints-wise formally about this premises since August 2015.
Thank you.
There's been no further complaints from residents in that period.
Can I just jump in there?
Just for a second, and that includes the 4 temporary event notices that have happened.
Yeah, there were no complaints as a result of those 4 temporary event notices.
Okay. Yes, Ms Jones.
One thing I'd like to say, we have cameras, and on that outside area, there is a camera. So, you know, if any of the neighbours wanted to say, look, I was out there at 10:30, there were people out there, you know, they can come to me and I can show my camera footage and say, well, there was or there wasn't, or, you know, that camera is there for you guys and also me.
Okay.
It's there to
That's
back
very
up
useful.
mine
very
as well. So
yeah. Okay. I would just like to emphasise a point here to the objectors. What we're here to decide today is not the use of the beer garden, although some of your complaints do, you know, go into the loud. It's to actually authorise the sale of alcohol within that area, as opposed to the licensed premises.
yeah.
I would like to ask the objectors if they truly believe that where the alcohol is sold would actually increase the noise.
I don't know that I can answer that question, to be honest with you.
That's okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm just putting a point of view.
The only thing I would say is that you could probably, you are more inclined, I guess, to go to the outside bar more frequently than perhaps you would be to the inside bar. Therefore, you would drink more, possibly.
Yes, I can see. It's
and that's yes, the only. It's the only logic, the only connection I can put to it.
Yeah, Mr. Alba, again, just a second, yeah. Mr. Alba, as I say, it's where the people are going to be buying the alcohol that we are actually here to deliberate on today. And do you think that having the outside bar area would increase the disturbance?
Well, question. Yes, I think the disturbance would be increased for the same point that was made by my co-neighbour. As far as there will be more people that will be attracted, and also in our letter we put that it would be seen as a gimmick for more people to attend, therefore increasing the volume, therefore increasing the disturbance in that local area, if not controlled.
All right, and then I have one final question then regarding all of this to the applicant, Karen Jones. Do you believe that having a member of staff actually in the area selling the alcohol, do you think that may have an effect on whether or not a rowdiness or loud behaviour could be managed? Yeah, I mean, it just means we're going to have a member of staff out there all of the time. So, you know, instead of being at the bar inside where you might not, and the door is shut, you hear the noise outside, there's somebody going to be there. And if there's somebody swearing, we can say enough of that, or kids are screaming, you know, and we don't get me wrong, it's a pub, it happens. But, you know, it just means that if there's somebody out there, when that bar is open, we have direct control of our customers that are there. So, yeah, okay. There we are then. Anybody else have any questions at all for any of the people in the meeting? No?
Chair, can I come in? Yeah.
Of course.
And I think for the questions to the residents, I think my questioning was going to be the same as yours, which you've quite succinctly put anyway, and it is relation to this application simply relates to the sale of alcohol in the beer garden, not the consumption of. The bar, if that bar was moved a meter inside the premises building, then obviously they could sell alcohol from that bar as well. And the point I wanted to bring to your attention, I know someone mentioned the CCTV that was in the garden as well.
Yes, Jones,
there is a condition attached to the license at present, which is what I was just looking at now, which says a CCTV system shall be installed in the premises to cover interior public areas, the main entrance point, and any outside area specified in the license. Those recordings must be retained for a minimum of 31 days and copies produced on request to the police or the licensing officer. Now, the interesting point I think here is the outside area isn't currently specified on the license. Going forward, if this license was to be approved, then the outside area would be specified on the license, and that CCTV system condition of that CCTV would apply. So if there were breaches of the license or allegations of such, then the residents, if they brought those to our attention, we could review that CCTV footage and clarify exactly when the outside area was closed.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, may I ask Mr. Chappell a quick question?
Of course. I'll come to you now in a moment, Mr. Talbot.
Oh, thank you, Chair. In respect of that, the camera itself is CCTV only, isn't it? So it's only visual. It's not audio.
No, it's not audio.
Thank you.
It doesn't specify audio. It just says CCTV.
Okay, right. Mr. Alba, you have something else to add?
Thanks for that, Chair. I was about to raise a very similar question relating to Gavin's there, and as far as actually, could the restriction include audio as well? Because many of the complaints made by the residents are about noise in that local area. So
I see Mr. White is shaking his head. So
thank you very much for that, Mr. Albert. In respect of audio, we have to consider, or certainly Celtic Lodge would have to consider what's called GDPR, data protection and privacy. Therefore, they couldn't actually be recorded, the audio of it. The only issue you'd be able to see actually on footage would obviously be the visuals. So no, you couldn't add a condition in respect of audio, no.
Okay.
But to follow up on that, if I may, Gavin, I believe that if the clear signage was provided by the applicant on the local premises that there's recording, including video, that would comply with GDPR requirements, and as far as clarifying to any particular person that attends that it is being recorded with audio.
No, that's incorrect.
No, I wouldn't be happy to impose that type of.
In respect to, sorry, Chair, in respect to Mr. Albert, in respect of CCTV, because it's closed circuit television and it only does a visual image, there's nothing to do with audio. I'd be very surprised if many places actually did audio in itself.
Okay, thank you.
I have a further clarification, if I may. On the basis that the recording is held for 30 days, what is the formal process of complaints, for want of better words, where effectively the license has been breached, to make sure that we can help the applicant, Karen, manage her premises effectively from a local perspective? What is the formal process? Because I'm quite surprised that there's only been, I think, as Neil mentioned, only a few.
I'm going to move on very shortly to that. I'm going to ask for an update for the environmental health officer that should have been here today. So I'm going to go to that shortly. But Neil, it's a question of writing into the licensing department, yes?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the complaint address is either to our email inbox or via our telephone line. So it's the Legal Regulatory Services team. The email address is lrs@npt.gov.uk.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
And the telephone number is the licensing or Legal Regulatory Services number, which is 763050. and they are the formal avenues for making a complaint to us regarding the breaches of the license. Obviously, if it's noise related within the licensable hours, then environmental health would generally deal with that. But I would suggest that licensed premises complaints initially all come through to our team, and we will obviously refer to environmental health if needed.
Okay.
Normally it's a breach of the 10 o'clock threshold, but yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think we've covered a lot of questions there. I want to make a little progress now. So, Mr. Chappell, do you have anything further to add to the application today?
No, I think I've covered everything that I've marked down here for now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. White, any other legal matters you wish to raise to us?
No, Chair, no.
Okay. Any further questions from members of the subcommittee? You've heard enough. Any final, very brief words? Oh, Mr. Councillor James.
Yeah, sorry, it's for Neil really. With the conditions of the licence, obviously got the 2000 rule. Would it be possible to put a condition on there for signage? I'm just thinking if there's signage saying that
Signage is already conditioned, I believe, Mr. James.
Okay.
And under the premises licence, they do have signage to say that if you're in the outside area, you need to be aware of being quiet. So that already exists.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, thank you. Right, so nothing further from members of the committee. A final brief sentences from all three. So they're from the applicant first, please.
So sorry, Chair, before we go on to that, can I just jump in on what the Councillor James's question, just for 1 second for clarity?
Of course, yeah, if it adds clarity, yes.
I was just very quickly looking at the condition currently attached to the licence in relation to signage.
Yeah.
The signage is quite specific to patrons leaving in a quiet and orderly manner so as not to cause nuisance to local residents.
Okay.
Not
while they're actually at the premises.
Unless I'm missing it here.
Okay.
And you've seen something else. It's a standard condition which is on quite a number of our licenses, but there is the potential, I think, for making amendments to such a condition. So it relates.
We'll take that on board.
So it relates to the 10 o'clock closing of the beer garden as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Should such a condition be imposed, Ms. Jones, would you be agreeable to that? Signage in the beer garden?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Right. Okay. So we'll do that in our deliberation. So final last sentence, Mr. Alba.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I've lost the Mr. Price.
Yes, no, I've got nothing further to add. It's clarified a few things for me, and at least we've got a route should there be any breaches now to talk to the local council.
Okay. Right, before I finish question part, do we have a member of environmental health or somebody that can represent them today to answer any questions?
No, Chair, we haven't got anybody that's come in.
Okay, in that case then, we have to take into account what's in the bundle. And there is a one word, oh sorry, I'm on the wrong page now, Peter Malloy. There we are. The one which I read out because certain members didn't have the bundle, which was that looked at our complaints database and there are no noise complaints associated recently. However, I would say that they are proposing the site they're proposing is bordered by residential properties. I would say that is likely to cause a problem. Doesn't say how or why or when. So we haven't really got really substantial data on that. I think as well would need temporary permission if that's possible. So Mr. Chappell, I understand that this application is on a permanent basis, that the outside area would have a permanent license to sell alcohol. Is that possible that it could be on a temporary basis?
I mean, yes, anything is really possible with in relation to the license. You could condition it in such a way that it was on a temporary basis, so it would cease at a certain time. It's not usually the done thing. No. Obviously, there are ways in which a license can be looked at again by way of a licensing review. So it's generally if you feel that the application is acceptable in its current form,
Right.
then I would say then you would grant it and look again at it if it caused problems in the future, rather than temporarily conditioning something on the license. I just don't generally see that done very often.
So sort of thing that you're innocent until proven guilty, that type.
Yeah, and I think this this applicant, the representation from the environmental health officer was asking about a temporary permission, and I'm wondering if that referred to, they would need temporary event notices to cover it in the interim period. It's not really clear what's asked for there, to be honest with you.
Okay, and on that basis, I would ask the Democratic Service Officer here today to contact Environmental Health regarding any submissions they make to this committee in the future. But if they do actually make a statement or put a representation in that somebody from the department is present at the meeting, we are flying a little blind here. However, it wasn't a long submission. It was virtually 2 sentences. So I would like if that could be done, Nicola.
Yes, certainly, Chair. I'll speak to
Okay,
Kerry
thank you very
Morris.
much. Okay. All right then. Well, that basically is the process of the application. You've all had opportunities to state your case. Mr. Alba.
Thank you. So I apologise. Another point of clarification based on what Neil just said there, on the basis of, whilst a temporary is not the norm, I take it that it is possible to do a temporary licence based on the approval, because I sense obviously that this may be approved from that perspective, and I would welcome that, and I think Karen would as well, or the applicant would as well, on the basis that if that was given sufficient amount of time, let's say for 6 months or 12-month temporary licence, to make sure that actually that we can work together to make sure that she gets what she needs from that external bar area, and we get to feedback to her any particular issues that need to be reflected on. I don't know.
I do hear what you're saying, Mr. Alba. However, the way we actually sort of work as a general principle is that opportunities for any complaints are put in place, and anybody can make a complaint. And until the complaint is made, we wouldn't necessarily put the onus on the licensee as a temporary measure. We would grant the license or not grant the license, and we have to come up with reasons why we would do that or not do
Understood.
that. So I think that's possibly the way we will go today. However, I do need to confer with my colleagues, and we need to deliberate this. But I would just say that it would be neater then to approve or not approve the license, but have in place all the powers to make sure the conditions are adhered to. All right, Mr. Chappell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that you can't issue a temporary license. It would have to be a condition of the license that was temporary. There's no, well, you can do a temporary license, but not in this particular case, because this is a variation. So we're only looking at the part of the application which involves the variation, not the existing license.
Right. Last thing, Mr. Alba, because I do need to make progress on this.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, let me just get my hand down as well. So the follow-on question to that, again to Neil, Mr. Chappell, in as far as from a license perspective, what is the threshold for which a license is reviewed if it's been breached? And this is coming back to complaints and how they've been accumulated. Is it 5 complaints, 10 complaints, a multitude, 100 complaints over a period of time? How does that work?
We do now have Rachel Matthews in the meeting.
Oh.
Yeah, shall I just answer that, Chair?
Please.
Yeah, there is no defined threshold for meeting a review. It is, each premises is considered on its own merits. So the council has a policy that it will follow in relation to dealing with complaints, and it sort of escalates it as it goes. Initially, first complaints, we'd obviously deal directly with the applicant and try to rectify those issues. But it would also depend on the severity of the breach as well.
Understood.
So obviously the council wouldn't look too kindly on an event going there till 11, 12 o'clock in the beer garden. You know, that would be dealt with quite harshly in the first instance. If you had, however, an initial breach where perhaps they had gone 5 minutes over their time, then obviously that would be dealt with in probably a slightly different way. So it is very much for us to look at the complaints that come in, and then deal with each one of those on the severity on each one on its merits.
But a regular breach would be brought eventually to the council for discussion, even though if it might be 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Super.
and I should add as well that the power to review a license is not just vested in the responsible authorities, but it is also a power that the local residents have themselves.
In what way?
So there's a process under the Licensing Act which allows the residents to apply for a review of a license. So there's an application process to go through, much the same way as Mrs. Jones has made an application to us today, where we're properly evidenced. And then essentially you arrive back in one of these committees, and we go through the evidence, but as the applicants rather than Mrs. Jones here today. So you would be an applicant for the review of a license.
Lovely, thank you.
So that is possible where you have evidence to support your cause.
I hope that settles some of your concerns, Mr. Alba. Now I'm going to move on because Rachel Matthews is actually in the meeting now. So I would like to call Rachel Matthews because...
Hello. Sorry, I had an appointment with the magistrates, which they kept me waiting, and also I've had IT issues, so apologies everyone.
Listen, it happens. I'm glad that you're finally here before we make deliberations. So basically, we have the submission today to apply for a variant in the license, and you made a submission. And I would like really for you to explain what you meant. It's on page, oh dear me, I've enlarged my page number now.
11, Chair.
Thank you very much. Page 11 in the bundle for everybody to know, and it's the sentence I've read out twice now. So could you please explain what you mean by, there we are. I think there will, no, I would say that there is likely to cause a problem. What do you mean by that? Because we're a little in the dark.
Well, I know historically that there've been a lot of noise complaints associated with the premises. A colleague of mine served a notice a couple of years ago with regards to noise issues.
Yeah.
And also the proximity of the people's houses onto the back of the property.
Right.
I think because it's virtually surrounded by residential premises.
Yeah.
And I think that any sort of degree of noise is going to be intrusive into people sort of relaxing in their gardens, having people round for a drink, right, or, you know, sitting with the windows open.
Okay.
And you've got sort of crowds of people having a laugh and a jolly sort of thing. And
right,
one of the other things that we had also got was a complaint about foul language being used,
right,
which, you know, we all know happens when people have had a drink. But yeah, I think, you know, when it's at the end of your garden, it's not really expected. That's more sort of behaviour you'd expect to see in a town centre.
Okay,
but that's my opinion.
Excuse me, I have a question for you then. What we're here to discuss today is not whether or not there will be people imbibing alcohol in this area, but whether or not we can actually authorise the sale of alcohol within that area. And the specific question I have for you, and I have asked it in the meeting, is do you think that selling the alcohol in that area will increase the disturbance as opposed to them going into the public licensed premises to buy the alcohol and then coming out. That is only what we are discussing here today. We're not discussing the use of the beer garden per se.
Okay, well, personally, I'm only really able to assess whether selling the alcohol would increase the likelihood of nuisance. It depends whether that means people are more able to access more alcohol and more people are on the premises.
Right.
So,
okay, thank you.
Whether we think the use of that area would increase the likelihood of that, then yes.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know if I'm the lone voice in all of this, but
Sometimes
Not at all.
Yes. Okay. The only other question I have, you have stated a lot of complaints. Where have these complaints been logged?
on our flare system, I
Yeah.
would say over the years since the premises has been operated by the current licensees, it's dipping in and out, coming onto our radar, you know, sort of every year or so.
Right. So how many complaints have you got in total?
I don't know, actually. I can find that information out for you, but I don't know at this stage.
Well,
Can
can
I
I
ask-
limit it? Can I? Yeah, I'll come back to you now. How can I limit it to the last 2 years?
I know, well, the most recent complaint, I think, was foul language being heard coming from the premises.
Do you know the date of that complaint?
No, I don't know. It's on my database, which I'm having IT issues with.
Right. If I gave you a few minutes, would you be able to find that?
I'll have a look, yes, sure.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I'll come back
thanks.
to the applicant now then.
Yeah, I'd be keen to find out when they were logged, because they certainly haven't been passed to
Right.
me.
Okay.
I have never been made aware of any complaints since Mr. Chappell said in 2015, and that was, and I'm sure Mr. Chappell, well, whether he will or not, the people that were serial complainers moved in 2015, and since that house move went ahead, haven't had any complaints since
Okay.
that
Right.
day.
I'm not
Another
unfortunately.
thing I'd like to say to Rachel is, if I could come back to this, this has been a licensed premises for 70 years.
Oh, right.
If anybody that's lived, you know, backed onto this premises have done so, have bought their properties since this has been a
Okay.
licensed premises, so it's not as if they didn't know it was here when they bought their house.
Right. We're not actually, and I keep having to try and bring it back, because I know there's a lot of things that we could be talking about, but basically today is about whether or not your application to sell alcohol in the beer garden as a variance of your already existing license is to be approved or not. So the history, we can all assume that people do know there's history to public houses. So I'm going to leave that out of it. I'm just waiting really now for the list of complaints from environmental health, because I would like to know when was the most recent and how many there have been.
Could I forward you the email for you to see all of the records that we've got?
Right, could you forward it to Nicola Heaton? She's the Democratic Services Officer, and then maybe Nicola could actually inform us.
Yes, okay.
I can understand you don't want it to go outside council for GDPR reasons, so we need to do it this way.
Yeah, that's right. I'll send it on now.
Okay, Nicola, if you can tell me when you receive that information. I think this is a learning curve for us, Mr. Chappell and Nicola, that when we get representations from environmental health, we dig deeper a little and try and get them to explain a little bit more when they actually put a submission in. You know, I think that what we've had from the department there raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah, I agree, Chair.
Okay. Again, apologies, because we're trying to do things. Mr. Talbot, I know you might want to speak again, but I'm just trying to wait and get this figure from Environmental Health.
I'm just, I'm having a lot of connection issues with the database, so just apologise for that.
Could you tell us numbers and dates?
I can, yeah.
If you can see it, then at least you could give the information to the subcommittee here.
Yeah.
Nothing that is identifiable, obviously.
Okay, so oh, my computer it's not working at all.
Oh dear. Okay then.
It's been freezing all morning. I had this problem with the magistrates as well.
Right. Listen, I understand it can be very stressful, Rachel, and I've asked you specific questions that maybe you weren't ready for, but it all stems from the fact that how many complaints have been registered is quite important.
Yeah, sure. I have got the information here, but it's literally the computer is frozen.
Right. Okay, we'll have to proceed on the basis of what we have then.
It'll come through. I'll have to restart it, I think.
If you could do that then. And I apologise to everybody if we're waiting around again, but this is very important information that should be to hand to the subcommittee for when they make their deliberations. So I hope you understand why I'm given a little bit of extra time, and we're already at nearly an hour and a half to make a deliberation on one application.
I would suggest, Chair, that also between Mr. Chappell's database.
But I would like to get it right. Yes, Mr.
There's obviously a disjoint as well between Mr. Chappell's database and what the Environmental Health Department have. Is there not a way of centralising that in future? I mean, just thinking for future opportunity, in terms of continuous improvement.
Well, the Environmental Health Department give advice to many other departments when complaints are brought, say for planning reasons, biodiversity reasons, noise and light, sure. All sorts of things. So basically, we would ask them for the information. Right. I don't think that they could actually, and listen, the officers may tell me wrong here, I don't think that they can actually inform everybody of every incident. They are the specialised department to which we all go. If there's a complaint, we say to Environmental Health, well, how many complaints have you had? They are the go-to. With regards to licensing, obviously, Mr. Chappell, there is a slight difference of department because licensing is a department of its own, and
I really
so we do our best to get information correlated across departments, but the go-to would probably be Environmental Health. Because that is where people do, if they ring in with a complaint about noise, that's where it's centred. If it's coming regarding a licensed premises, then I presume Mr. Chappell would like to know. Officers, would you disagree with anything I've said there?
No, I think, I mean, we, like you say, we're completely different departments. We sit in legal services, environmental health, sit in public protection. We do not use the same databases. Even if we did, which some authorities do, then there would be restrictions on access on what you could see anyway, because I'm only entitled to see things that I actually deal with.
And that is why I'm having a bit of bother this morning, Mr. Talbot, because one officer has information at her disposal when a computer works, but obviously I can't allow her to put that on the screen for us all to see, because there are issues with what the legalities of what we can share with members of the public. So I think we do have to stick with the the idea that environmental health, so that's what I always say, because I have another hat on in planning as well. So if anybody has complaints, ring environmental health, because when a committee meets to discuss anything, they would go to environmental health and say, well, what's been going on? So I take on board what you're saying, but that is our centralised database, is environmental health.
Understood.
And I think, Chair, the only reason it doesn't work at the moment is because of this unique situation that we're in that, you know, we are generally working from home. The systems don't work the same as they do in the office.
And connectivity isn't
in the office today because everything works so much better when I'm here.
Right.
And it is a little bit more difficult. If this was a physical meeting, everybody would have been prepared and come with the relevant.
Be in the same room, absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know.
So where are we, Rachel? Are we, or Nicola?
I had.
Sorry, Rachel. Chair, I've just emailed you the records that Rachel has sent me. There's a number of records there, though, with quite a bit of data on each one.
Oh, right, okay.
You've just come through now.
I think a number of those are the TENS applications which were approved, and the complaints that mixed in with those.
So have you had any complaints regarding the noise over those 4 10s weekends?
Well, my colleague served a notice. I'll get the copy of the notice up for you.
Right, I've just had Nicola's email, just a second.
Yeah.
So, well, this is an awful lot of information. I need it condensed, you know, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't get in, that's what I can't get onto my database.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
basically,
refusing
some of this
access.
information goes back to 2010. I don't think it's quite relevant, you know, in 2021.
Yeah, that's all I've got, because the my flare records, my system is completely down.
Okay, I'll take on board what you said then.
If I come out of the meeting, I can phone IT and see if I can sort it out, and then I can forward it on once
No,
it's
I
done.
think just a second. I'm going to go to Mr. White. Mr. White, do you think we could proceed on the basis of the information we have to hand?
I do indeed, Chair. I
Thank you.
see an issue
Okay.
with that.
Yeah, thank you very much for trying, Rachel.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Listen, it's not your personal fault, and I'm not saying anything like that, but there is a systems thing that we need to look in here when we get any information from your department. And there's no disrespect to you as a person, and I understand you've had a stressful morning already, so thank you very much. But we will move on to the deliberation part of this application. Mr. Chappell.
So sorry, Chair, I just wanted to clarify with Rachel, if possible, that she seemed to suggest that there were complaints as a result of the temporary event notices, and potentially that there was a notice issued, which I assume would relate to a noise abatement notice. I'm unaware that one had been issued, well, very recently. I just wondered, do you have that information available, Rachel?
I think.
Would you...
Let me have a look to see if I've got the emails. I think I did send an email to Sarah.
I haven't had anything notice served to me, nothing at all. I haven't heard from anybody about any of the temporary events.
That's understood. Okay.
Okay, so
I know you said, Mr. White, that we could possibly proceed, But I think Mr. Chappell has raised a very important question there as to whether the TENS have actually made, oh, I can't think of my words now, but whether the TENS has provoked a complaint to environmental health, which has regarded, which has needed action taken. So I think we really need to know that.
I agree, Chair. I think by the point that I give my advice earlier, I don't think we were aware at that point that the
No, we weren't, and I take that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we are actually stuck just waiting again.
I'll put a call into IT, and as soon as they come back to me, I'll have the information. I can't. I'm really stuck at the moment.
Can I ask a question, Neil?
Yeah.
You, if there was a complaint, would I have had notice of that complaint?
Well, obviously the complaint hasn't come to licensing. I've obviously gone through our complaints history that we held on our licensing software. So this is something I suspect that may have come into environmental health. My concern is that it seems to relate to the temporary event notices that were, last month, and there was potential talk about an abatement notice, I think, which I think needs to be clarified before.
Well, yeah, I 100%.
Because that suggests that there are noise issues occurring at the premises now, whereas my complaint history hadn't had anything since August 2015.
And I haven't been told of anything since 2015 either. So.
Well, I don't think that it's relating to now. I think it's historic. It was when my colleague was dealing with the premises. So, I mean, I haven't dealt with the premises personally.
Right.
So,
okay, I've got a question here that we've got an email from you dated the 29th of April 2021.
Yes.
It's not mentioned in that email. I mean, you were sending a submission to this subcommittee. I presume that if it was recent, you would have included that in that submission.
Yes, yeah. Once we've served a notice on a premises, it stands there for as long as the premise is there, or as long as that occupier is there. So we don't remove the notices.
Okay.
After a couple of years, they're always in force. But
right, Mr. White, Mr. Chappell, I'm going to have to ask for your advice on this now. Do you think we need to get this before we can deliberate?
I'm having a look at the records now as we speak, Chair, and by the looks of it, the last complaint was made from the documents which Rachel, of course, has sent to Nicola. They were dated in 2019, and certainly the first one of those is a TENS. So unless it would be helpful to find out whether in the last 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is, whether an abatement notice is served, even if Rachel is to contact one of her environmental health officers who do via Teams or any other format like that, just to confirm whether other person can check the system.
Right. I'm minded then to have a small adjournment for, say, like 15 minutes while we try and get this information. People could maybe have a comfort break. So I'm looking at the time. It's 11:37. We'll reconvene about 5 to 12. It'll just allow people to try and get this information without us just waiting here. Councillor James, do you have to leave?
No, I was just going to suggest that the officer that's actually dealing with it, would it be worth getting them in, the environmental health officer, because they'd be able to put some clarity into if anything has happened, if there has been a debate.
Rachel is the officer from environmental health, and she's in the meeting.
Served the notice. I've only recently taken it on licensing and
I'm
noise.
with you. Okay.
So a former colleague will have served the notice, but I'm struggling with the computer system to get into their records to find it.
Right.
But when I find out who it was that had done it, I'll see if I can bring them in.
That would be helpful. In the meantime, I'm going to adjourn until 5 to 12. just to give people a comfort break. So you don't have to leave the meeting per se. We could leave the recording going, but you may leave the screen if you wish to have a comfort break, get a cup of tea or something. But I'll actually formally just sort of reconvene at 5 to 12, okay?
Yeah. Chair, I'll actually stop the recording now and I'll restart it then when...
Oh, all right then, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.